Okay, so we're going to scan some line art, and this is going to be for, not for printing, this is for digitizing. So I'm going to bring up the scanner software. Now if the scanner software is not loaded and you're on an instructor station, I do have it in the Viscom, in the, it's in my folder. So if for some reason this isn't loaded when you're in, go to Viscom, go to Bilbrey, grab this Epson DMG and drag it to the desktop. And then, I've already got it on the desktop, and then double click on it and start the installation by double clicking on this and hitting install. Okay, so this is installed now. I'll get IT to fix this, but until then, there is a way around it. It's in the Viscom, Bilbrey, and there's an Epson thing. Okay. Now once you get it installed, it's under Applications, and it is under the Epson Software Utility, and you want to choose Epson Scan, and it will open the Epson scanner. I always move this to the side, to the left. Now by default it'll do a full auto mode like this. This is the window you get by default. Now, being that you want to be professionals, you don't want to do anything in full auto mode. Don't let the computer make choices for you because it always makes the wrong ones. So instead of the mode being full auto, go to professional mode because you want to have professional results. You want to be a professional. And then we're going to change some of these settings. So this is reflective art, meaning it's not film. We don't need to change that. I've placed this artwork in the scanner upside down in the lower left hand corner. Everything here really nothing here needs to be changed, but in the destination area where it says image type, by default it might be 24-bit color, so we want to choose that, and we want to click on that and scroll down to black and white because this is no grays, no color, black and white. Now normally we scan 1200 pixels per inch if we're going to just print with this thing after we scan it, but we're going to do some colorization and modification in Photoshop first. So I'm going to start with higher resolution. If I were doing this in Illustrator and not working in Photoshop, I'd do it at 150 dpi, which that's actually a misnomer. That should be ppi, not dots per inch, but pixels per inch. Yeah, it says dpi right now. It's supposed to be ppi. dpi is actually referencing the dots per inch on an output device on your printer. So this is a misnomer. This should be ppi. So 150 would be what we'd use if we wanted to go right into Illustrator. But we're going to go into Photoshop, so we need to use the end pixels per inch, the end resolution that we would use in the finished product, which is 300. This keeps it from pixelating. Now, how big of a size do we need this? Well, the document size itself, we don't know yet until we hit Preview. So I hit Preview, and the Preview window opens, and it will preview this artwork that I have in the scanner. I will move this window over to the right whenever this is done previewing. It's not scanning, it's just previewing. That way I can see both of these windows open at the same time. Now, you do want to marquee around the things that you want to keep. Okay, let's assume I want to keep this area right here. So I click and drag and marquee over that. Now, if I wanted to reduce or increase the size of this marqueed graphic, right now the marquee's at 8.10 inches by 8.07 inches. Now I don't want to change the document sizes width and height because if I do, watch what happens. If I type in 10 for height and hit the tab key, oops, the marquee just changed. So you want your marquee to stay where you stay put. What I'm really interested in doing is either enlarging or reducing the size of this graphic. It's now 8 by 8. I might need it smaller or larger, preferably smaller. So where it says target size, I click on the little rectangle to the left of that word, and I can make this a smaller size or a larger size if I need to. Now I'm going to make it just slightly smaller because I like working with things a little bit larger than reducing them down. Before I make it smaller, I'm going to click on this lock, which will lock it proportionally, meaning whatever I type in the width, the height will automatically set proportionally to the width. Now let me unlock it first and type in a number. Evidently it doesn't like to have it locked until it gets a number in. So let's say I need this about 5 inches by 5 inches. I put a 5 in here, then I click the lock, and it will automatically reduce this down to 62% of its original size and at 5 by 5. So that's pretty nice. I don't have to do math. Otherwise, I have to do mathematics. And when I like what I see, I can hit scan. But before I do, I want to talk about one other thing, which is this threshold adjustment. Previously, I scanned this and it was capturing a lot of bleeding from my marker. So the threshold will allow me to lighten up my scan a little bit or darken it. So it will allow me to catch more detail, which now you can really see things, a lot of noise coming in, or it'll allow me to catch a little less detail. Sometimes I'll catch a little less detail because I want to clean up my edges. Now, assuming I have everything I need, I'm going to scroll using this icon here. Looks like I have everything in order. It is reflective, black and white, 300 pixels per inch because I'm going to play with it in Photoshop first. I changed my target size to 5 inches by 5 inches because I'm assuming that's what I'll need in the end. And I adjusted my threshold. Now I'm ready to scan it. What you want to do is it'll scan it to documents and you guys don't even, or pictures, and you go like, where is that folder? So I usually scan it to the desktop or choose a flash drive, which I do not have plugged in right now. I will name it because it'll call it IMG by default. That's what it will be, IMG. So I'm going to call it Canoe. By default, it'll also be a JPEG, so you want these to be TIFFs. And that's pretty much all you need to do. You hit OK, and right now it's scanning. It's going to scan it to the desktop. It won't take too long at 300 pixels per inch. If I were scanning at 1200 pixels per inch, it would be a whole other story. Now, this comes up. If that does not come up and you wanted to get rid of some things, you'll see that it is here on the desktop. Now I can open this in Photoshop. So I'll drag it to the Photoshop icon. Make sure that's the right one before I do anything else. Yes, it was. And open it in Photoshop. Now when I zoom in, you will see that you can see the pixels to some extent when I zoom in, but I'm zoomed way in. But the more I zoom out, the less you can see the pixels. It's not 72 pixels per inch. Okay, now I'm going to share with you some industry secrets that nobody else really, that I know of around here, shares with you. How do you take something like this in line art and start colorizing it in Photoshop and make it work for you? This is something that graphic novel artists do. I did it when I was in the kids magazine publishing, and it may be quick and dirty, but it's also tried and true. Now, one thing you have to be careful is there's this thing called anti-aliasing, and what anti-aliasing does is it softens pixels between one color and another. Well, we don't want this to go soft, meaning we want those pixels to hold their nice crisp edge. We don't want any gray between it and the next color. Now I'll show you what anti-aliasing is for just a moment. Let me duplicate this background. Hello, duplicate. Okay, it doesn't want to work. Yes, unlock the background. Well, yeah, but you should be able to just duplicate it without it being locked. Okay, well I'll do a select all and I'll copy and paste it into a new layer. Very interesting. I did a new document, pardon me. Let me do a new layer. Okay, so this is a little glitchy. Yeah, I have nothing selected and I'm in layers. I should be able to make a new layer no matter what I'm in. Yeah. Yeah, I'm clicking new layer, nothing's happening. So we have a glitchy problem that I need to get with IT about. So let me write this down. So go to the flyout menu and see if it'll do it. Yeah, it's all grayed out. Okay. Well, let's do that. You know what? Let me think about something else. Let me see if maybe it's because it's in bitmap mode. Maybe if I go to grayscale, that might be the problem. That's what the problem was. Oh, when you're in bitmap mode, you can't have more than one layer. Bitmapped. Yeah, the black and white mode in essence is a bitmap. Bitmap meaning it's an on or an off. It's black or it's white. There's no in between. There's no grays. There's no nothing. Well, it was set when I was at the scanner, and I told it to make it black and white with no grays. You know, like a black and white photo is continuous tone. It's called grayscale. But a black and white graphic, like we just scanned in, is black and white only, no grays. It's in bitmap mode. So when somebody says black and white line art, you automatically, at some point, once you get educated at this, you'll automatically think, oh, that's going to be a bitmap graphic. But this is going to be colorized, so I have to change this.
So yeah, it came into Photoshop in a bitmap mode, which is a single layer. There's no layer. You can't do it. So she just had to change the mode from Photoshop
to grayscale or RGB or anything other than bitmap. Yeah. In bitmap mode, I can't do a lot of anything. Let me put it back to where it was. So here I was like, I can't create a new layer. Why is this? Photoshop, why are you fighting with me? Well, because I'm using a bitmap graphic, it can't create another layer. The only thing it could do with a bitmap graphic is you can erase stuff and you can add stuff. A lot of these tools, some of them don't even work. Like if I'm trying to use my magic wand tool, it'll say, no, you cannot use it because it's bitmap mode. Okay, so first things first, even though we scan it in as line art, we're going to change it to grayscale because that's the only thing we have. Yeah, Photoshop knows it's line art and knows that you shouldn't be messing with it. It knows that you should just erase stuff and clean it up and be ready for print. It knows that, so it's kind of protecting it. Well, we're going to colorize this thing, so we have to modify it a little bit. Now, if I'm going to colorize it, I might as well go back to image mode and switch it from grayscale now to RGB or CMYK. Now, RGB is good to use because the filters, all filters work in RGB mode, whereas in CMYK mode, some of the filters don't work. So I'll work in RGB mode until I'm ready to finish up the illustration. Now, I'm going to duplicate this background, and I'm going to turn off the last layer, the bottom layer. And I'm going to rename this line art, even though it's grayscale. That's my line art graphic. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to see if it had anti-aliased. By copying and pasting a layer, it should not anti-alias, meaning the pixels will stay nice and sharp. But let me show you something that will create anti-aliasing. You want to be really definitive about your scanning. Get it in there straight. Don't have to rotate it. Don't have to scale it or skew it in here, because as soon as I try to free transform, which is either scale, skew, warp, or do anything, maybe I need to rotate it slightly. If I rotate this slightly, because it wasn't quite straight in the scanner, now when I zoom in, that is anti-aliasing. You guys see that? We have gray pixels between the white and black pixels. Yuck! Yuck, I wanted that to stay sharp. If you move this layer, scale it, skew it, rotate it, whatever, that's what will happen. You will have anti-alias edge. Okay? So, this is why it's good to scan it properly in the first place, scale the rotations right, because you do not want this, which is anti-aliasing. So I'm going to trash that layer. What you do want, however, is you do want the black line to be on its own layer, not the white. You want no white pixels here because we're going to paint under the black line. So I'm going to go to the background. I'm going to unlock it. You can unlock it since it's grayscale. I'm going to choose my magic wand, which is hiding behind your quick selection tool. By default, your quick select will be up. Choose your magic wand. Turn anti-aliasing off in your options at the top of the control panel. If you don't turn that off, it'll soften the edges. And I'm going to select an area that's black. It doesn't matter which area, just select one. Then I'm going to go select, which is the menu at the top, and I'm going to say select similar, and it's about 6 items up from the bottom under that. And what it's doing is it's selecting every black pixel on there. Not selecting white, just black. This is really important. We don't duplicate a layer. We select just the black pixels. I'm going to copy it, create a new layer, make sure that layer is selected, and then I'm going to paste it. Okay? So I'm going to turn off layer 0, and here is what I have. It is not anti-aliased. It is nice and tight. The edges aren't soft. It's really important because you do want this black line to stay nice and crisp. Now I will lock this 0 layer if I can here. Let's lock it. And I'll turn it off because that's kind of like a backup layer in case I screw something up. Now, what I do with this is it's painfully simple. It's painfully simple what I do here. Does it take time? Yes, but it's really simple. I create a new layer And I drag the line art layer over the top of that, and I lock the line art layer. Lock your line art layer. You don't want it moving. You don't want anything happening there. Lock it. You may have to unlock it occasionally just to select something. But when I was doing like Humpty Dumpty and we were doing Turtle and all these other kids magazines, this is what we do. We do things in black. We bring them in and we colorize them here, and it would look like we painted it. It would look like sometimes watercolors and stuff. But we always kept that line art intact. Now just for giggles, I'm going to take layer 2 and I'm going to select all, and I'm going to fill it with white. So I'm going to go to edit and fill, and right now white is the background color in my tools panel. And there we go. That way, because those transparent pixels just bother my face. They bother my eyes rather. So I'm going to keep using this layer. Now you could use multiple layers if you're careful. Let's say maybe for the sky I want to use one layer, for the water I want to use another, and so on. It's okay to do that. Now, here's where it gets simple. I'm going to go to layer 1 and see if I can make a selection. I sure can. I selected the water area, and maybe I want to color that water area a certain color. Now I go to my layer beneath here, and I'm going to just choose, I'm going to be pretty careless here. I'm just going to choose a nice lightish color blue for this water. And I'm going to fill it with that light color by going to edit and fill and choosing the foreground color, and there's the blue. But you're going, oh, but the mountains aren't blue. Yeah, I know. I'll make a different layer and paint those. And, oh, it went into the boat. Yeah, I know. Don't worry. I'll fix that too. I'll just paint over it. Now, I can do stuff to this layer. I can select it. I like paint. Oftentimes, I'll use just the paintbrush. And I will use different airbrushing techniques. And I will paint in midtones, highlights, and shadows here. And it won't look all that great. Trust me, it just won't look very good at all. I can change the flow of it. I'll probably make this a little lighter because I'm going to deal with white. And I'm going to bring in some highlights and stuff. Has anybody ever watched Bob Ross? Happy little highlights. So there's some highlights. Now, again, it's not the best. And I might bring in some shadows. So I'm find a colored blue that's similar to this, and I'm going to reduce my flow. I'm going to reduce the size a little bit. It makes it less it makes it more transparent. It's not as, like, if it flows at 100%, that means 100% of the color is coming out. If you take it down, it means it softens it a little bit. Now, you can also adjust the opacity as well. So, like, if I were to spray and then hold, it's usually, wait, let me get the right color. If I were to spray and hold, like, the flow will be soft, and then it'll be really strong right in here. Actually, the flow doesn't seem to be working that well right now. That's okay. You can also adjust opacity. You're going, gosh, this looks really crappy. Yeah, I know. Don't worry about it. And I might get rid of some of this stuff up here because I really don't care for the fact that this sky is this blue color. So I just am going in here and I'm going to delete that stuff. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this area. Again, I'm on layer 3, and I can apply different filters and effects to it. So I might blur it a little bit. Maybe do a motion blur on this if I can. But you can do all sorts of stuff.
All of this is on its own layer.
This color itself is only on layer 3. Yeah, it's on its own layer. So I'm not affecting the line art. No, I'm not affecting it at all. So here I'm doing this, and I'm like, okay, that looks good. Done, pay me. It really doesn't look that great. I'm just in a hurry. But yeah, this, if I turn that layer off, that's all I'm doing is just that layer. So if I turn everything off, you can see here it is. So I'm painting in essence in Photoshop. Now this is still pixel based, but I'll create a new layer for, say, where my boat is, and I will. Sometimes you just have to use. Sometimes you can use a direct selection tool. Sometimes you can just quick select. But in this case, I'm actually going to draw an area where I want it to where my boat to be, and I'm holding down the lasso. If I hold down the Alt key, I usually zoom in too. Let me show you. I like thick black lines because it helps me to not have to be so freaking accurate. But I will click and hold down the Alt key, and I can just I don't even have to be pretty about it. I just make sure that I'm in between black. You know, I'm not going outside of black. I'm not going inside. You know, I'm always inside of black. And I'm making this selection. Now, if you're really good with the pen tool, which many of you guys haven't used that very much, I oftentimes will use the pen tool and create a path, a little clipping path or something, or just path. But if you're not very good with it, just use the lasso tool, and you can create a lovely path for whatever your object is by holding down the Alt key and just click, click, click. It looks really geometric if you turn off the top layer, but you won't notice it if you're doing it, if you're clicking in the middle of these black lines. So it takes time, just like everything else. Anything worth doing well takes some time. When I get to the outside, I just drag all the way around. I come back. Oops, I may have to alt click and drag that out. Come back to where you started. Wow, I'm really off. We'll see what happens here. Here's my selection. Obviously, I missed a whole bunch, so I can hold down the Shift key while I have my lasso, and I can add to that selection. There we go. I have this boat selected now. Now that's in its own layer, and I can color that a boat color. Now this would I would do a lot of spray painting on this, or using the brush tool. But for now, I'm just going to fill this with a fairly light brown. You don't see a lot of browns here on this color palette, so it's going to be right around here-ish. Oh, not there. I want a light brown, kind of a tannish brown. There we go. I'm going to fill it with that color. So I fill it and make sure I'm on the right layer. There we go. Now that's not the most prettiest brown ever. There's that. Now I can sit here and paint on this layer. I really want to probably go to paths and make this a working path, because I might need to select that area again and get rid of any sloppy painting that I did outside of the boat. So even though you may not use the pen tool that often, you can make a selection, a path. And there it is. I'm going to save the path. I'm going to call it boat. So you don't have to do this. This is just me thinking ahead, because I get really sloppy and I put paint all over the place. Now I can make this a selection again because I've saved it as a path. Make sure anti-alias is off. And there we go. If I need it, I actually don't need to make it a selection. I'm going to hit Command D. Now I can go in with my paintbrush and choose other browns, adjust my paintbrush size, and I can go in here and I can start painting in shadows and highlights and stuff like that. Now this is where a Wacom tablet would be really, really handy about now, because then I could do this all by hand, but I'm doing this with a mouse. So I'm going to sit there and put in highlights, midtones, and shadows. Now up in here it's very shadowed. It's almost black on the picture. So I can go in here and really shadow that, but I need to get a different color and maybe make it, my opacity needs to be bumped up. But you sit there and you just paint. Now this does take, again, a lot of time. This is how the graphic novels are colorized. They do it by hand with the line art oftentimes, or with a Wacom tablet. Then they go through and they colorize using different brushes in Photoshop, and they literally paint it. Okay, so it's getting darker up here as it comes in. Now, again, I would take a lot more time on this, but for a demo, I'm in a hurry. I'm going to make a lighter sort of highlight, and maybe there's some highlights in the boat from the gleam of the lights. Maybe I make a few highlights in here. Oops. But I can turn something pretty rough into something not too bad in give me a couple hours. And I'll sit there and I'll spend some more time on midtones, highlights, and shadows, getting some nice rich browns in here. But then what I'll do is, if I got way out here like this, oops, you know, you guys might get just crazy out here. Oops. I have this path where I can say, hey, make a selection from that path. Oops. What did I just do here? Did I just get rid of that path? There it is. I can say, hey, make it a selection. And then I can tell it to inverse the selection, and I just hit the delete key and it gets rid of everything that's outside that path. Now, what I'll do is I'll invert it again, and I'm going to run a filter on this, and I'm not sure which one. I think I'll just do a blur again a little bit on it, not an extreme blur. I need to actually be able to set the blur. Let's do a smart blur. You want it soft. You want it to look like it's painted. And then I might add some noise to it. So I'm going to say add some noise. Give me a Gaussian. And what this makes it look like is it makes it kind of look like it's been watercolored in a way. It's not a watercolor filter. But if you zoom in, it's got a really interesting texture. It softens things, especially when you print it. It doesn't show those pixels as bad, but it does soften it. It looks almost like it's been airbrushed in a way. It blends colors together nicely. Doesn't look as computer generated. I might even do that to the water. I might select that and go and add a noise filter on that.
I love those filters.
Noise filters are fun. They're just, they soften things. They make things not look so computer generated. So that's probably a little too much noise, but you guys get my drift. Now I colorize the mountains in their own layer. Now watch what happens when I turn the black layer off. It's going to look like a dog's dinner. Ew. That doesn't look good at all, does it? Does that look good to you guys? That looks like a dog's dinner. Blech. Looks like something you just mix up and feed to the dog. But as soon as you put that line art over it, look at the magic. Guys, this is stuff that no teacher taught me. This is stuff I learned out on the job. And you're like, well, that doesn't look half bad. You guys agree or disagree?
It's actually pretty cool. This was worth the entire semester.
This is worth your entire semester. Yes. This is worth, I always tell students, this right here is why we hire industry professionals to come in here, not just school people, school textbook people. Textbook people are great, but you get a good combination. This is why I came to teach, is because I wanted to share with you guys those things I was like, why didn't I learn that in college? That would save me a ton of time, and I would be so much further along in development of my portfolio and the pieces of my portfolio and the development in the things I wanted to do. I would had been so much further along than I was. So this can be a life, what do I call it? A life-changing kind of thing. Quality of life issue. You guys can spend hours and hours and hours doing something, or you can spend minutes and get the same effect. That's what I mean by a quality of life issue. I was doing this by hand with brushes and watercolor and then sending it off to a professional, have it scanned. And then I sat down once with Bart Rivers. He was my guy who was the illustrator at the kids' place. And he showed me this, and he showed me the blue pencil thing, the non-photo blue. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been wasting a lot of time with my talent. I could have produced tenfold what I had produced by doing everything just by hand. But he showed me these techniques, and I was like, oh my, I mean, I was just like blown away. And as soon as he turned that black layer off, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. That's what you've been doing? Right there. Now, you guys have the benefit of having me now, and if you can either choose to share this with others or keep it a secret. I don't keep it a secret because, well, I've already been there and done that. But you guys, this makes you more competitive. Now, that's actually under the recording. So I'm going to stop the recording, and we're going to move on from here to vector, okay? So I'm going to stop the recording, and we'll probably take a break, too, because you guys probably need one.